If it's one thing that anarchism is known for, it would be its opposition to hierarchy. But what is hierarchy exactly? And why do we oppose it? That's exactly what I'm trying to clarify in this video on the problem with hierarchy. The dictionary defines the Greek root word archy as meaning rule or government. Hierarchy is an established system of rule, organized according to rank. Monarchies, patriarchies, oligarchies, aristocracies, corporatocracies, liberal and social democracies, and other hierarchical societies are manifestations of the construct of hierarchy, whether with few rulers or many. Hierarchy relies on the principle of authority, which is a social construct that empowers the ruler in a hierarchical relationship to give commands and make the subordinate obey under threat of violence. This coercive and controlling system is upheld by both violence and moral conditioning in order to keep subordinates passive in their position of subordination. It's important to clarify the distinction between authority, expertise, and force in order to avoid any confusion. An architect might be real good at building houses, but that doesn't make them an authority. The expertise doesn't justify them a certain power over anyone. Being an expert just means that a person is generally recognized as competent for a given task, while having authority is a social relationship based on power and status derived from a hierarchical position that manufactures an association between the position and competence. A person using force to prevent another person from being run over by traffic is not an example of authority either. Authority is an ongoing social relationship between people based on domination and submission, not an isolated act of force. Nor is it authoritarian to use force to prevent authorities from establishing themselves. Organized resistance to attempts by oppressors to maintain or restore their position of authority is not itself oppressive. However, if former oppressors are just replaced with new ones who claim to be the vanguard of the people's liberation, that reversal of position does nothing to actually dissolve the oppressor-oppressed dynamic. I should also clarify that anarchism is not the opposition to unjustified hierarchies. It's the opposition to hierarchies, period. I mean, if someone thinks something is unjustified, no matter how authoritarian their politics might otherwise be, of course they would oppose it. Using the unjustified hierarchies definition just obscures the aims of anarchy. Not to mention, it begs the question of who exactly is determining what hierarchies are and aren't justified. Another hierarchy? And who justified that one? People got this definition from Noam Chomsky, who introduced a lot of new folks to anarchism. But if you look at a lot of his positions, it becomes clear that he's not exactly the best source of knowledge on this subject. But Andrew, what about parenting? Isn't that the justified hierarchy? Quite frankly, no. I've spoken about how the form of parenting we're accustomed to is deeply patriarchal and deeply harmful in several videos at this point. Parenting is only hierarchical when parents attempt to subordinate their child, typically with the threat of violence. Anarchist parents are quite capable of taking care of and raising their children while treating them as autonomous individuals and not subordinate pieces of property or extensions of themselves to be molded into obedient automatons. Anarchic forms of parenting have actually existed for probably as long as humans have, and some cultures, like the Mbuti and the Hadza, still practice it today. Once you start legitimizing authority, you've honestly lost the whole plot of anarchism. You give the authority power, and power has an appetite. Authoritarian power always seeks growth and expansion. Authoritarian power is a license to do harm, even if that wasn't your initial intention. Hierarchical authority is inextricably linked with the marginalization and disempowerment of those without authority, which creates dependency and dullness among the oppressed and deprives the oppressors of their connection to their full humanity. In a hierarchical society, everyone loses to some degree, even those at the top. But Andrew, what about Engels? Didn't he debunk anarchism in like 3 pages? No. He was just ignorant about the subject he was attempting to critique. He didn't grasp the anarchist conception of authority and acted as though organization is necessarily hierarchical and necessarily sacrifices each individual's autonomy. Engels being an out-of-touch capitalist, believed workers needed to be obedient, even under socialism, because industry requires authority. The reality is that workers need to exercise their autonomy and work out problems they face in the job themselves in order to do their jobs effectively, which is why work-to-rule practices, where workers do exactly what the bosses tell them to do, regardless of the consequences, are so effective. Anarchists don't oppose cooperation, coordination, mutual agreement, or organization. None of those things require authority. The question is how organizations are organized, and especially how decisions are made. It's not enough to oppose mere flavors of authority, like some leftists do. We need to oppose the principle of authority itself. We need to dismantle all ladders of status and control, because the problem isn't just a specific type or set of rulers, it's the whole thing. But Andrew, how will we protect ourselves from bad people? By resisting all forms of hierarchical authority. Even if you think people are so abusive, the safest course of action is to prevent those sorts of people from being elevated to positions of power that provide them access to more victims. If you believe human nature is naturally irresponsible, selfish, and greedy, then we should shift to a new political and economic system that does not encourage and enable those negative tendencies. If humanity is so flawed, then we cannot make an exception for the rulers, exploiters, and oppressors. Power spoils and power corrupts, both rulers and ruled. Free from the stupefying and servile constraints of hierarchy, billions will be empowered to experiment and transform society in the ways they see fit to bring out their individual potentials. Rather than political indifference, there will be a renaissance of political involvement. Rather than apathy, there will be a flourish of empathy and solidarity. Rather than elitism and uniformity, we would see the benefits of equality in bringing forth independent action and critical thinking. Self-determination and free association are what humanity needs to enrich itself. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your fellow peoples. Thanks once again, of course, to the family, including our newest member, Saskia Horton. Join these beautiful humans and support me too on patreon.com/sainttrue. Check out all my other videos for a range of radical topics. Follow me on Twitter @_sainttrue. Thanks again. Peace.